Very controversial issue. Of course, everybody in this House is aware of the Saskatchewan government taking the government to court based on the fact that the federal government has no jurisdiction imposing a tax like a carbon tax on the people of Saskatchewan. Madam Speaker, you know, the questions here are very clear and something that has to be defined. Are the Liberals proposing this tax because they really care about reducing greenhouse gases and carbon? Or is this tax being proposed just for that? It's a way to tax people to get more money into their coffers so that they can spend it as they see fit. I think the latter is true, Madam Speaker. The reality is when you start looking at what's been proposed out of Saskatchewan on carbon tax and on their climate strategy to meet their Paris emissions, there is a proposal out of Saskatchewan that would actually meet those emissions, that would actually allow us to move forward without doing a carbon tax. There's other provinces in Canada that actually meet their targets already. So then why are we forcing them to do a carbon tax? Why wouldn't we be embracing them? Why wouldn't we be saying, wow, that's great. You're not going to make your families pay all this money. You're actually going a way to meet your targets without doing that? You think this government would embrace that? If that was truly the goal, was to reduce emissions, to really reduce carbon, you think they'd embrace that? Because you think they wouldn't want to do harm to the economy, harm that they've done here in Ontario and harm that they want to transfer across the rest of Canada. You know, it's really frustrating when this government, when you look at new technologies that come into stream, and I'll use the carbon sequestration in Estevan in our coal-fired power plants. You know, with that technology, those plants are actually 5 times less greenhouse gases than natural gas. 5 times less. What's their reaction to this? Let's shut down coal. Shut it down. We don't want it. Well, why wouldn't you want it if it's 5 times cleaner than natural gas? Are you saying you're going to shut down all the natural gas ones then too? Is that your goal? Then what are we going to do to heat our houses? How are we going to actually do our manufacturing processes? Don't be ridiculous, Madam Speaker. This is not a reasonable solution. You know, you can embrace new technologies and actually meet your emission targets, and that's been proven in Saskatchewan. But this government comes back to them. What do they do to Saskatchewan? $60 million in transfers lost. They bring in $110 million in the budget for carbon cops. Carbon cops. And then they say it's revenue neutral.
Carbon cops?
Well, how can it be revenue neutral when you're already spending $110 million in carbon cops?
You're crazy.
It doesn't make sense. You know, in Saskatchewan, we're an exporting province. We grow food, we have forestry products, we manufacture goods that we ship around the world. We have to be competitive on the global platform. Our prices, our cost structures have to be such that we can compete around the world. We know that if you bring in a carbon tax, that takes that competitiveness away. In the market, for example, selling wheat, I can't price in a carbon tax. I can't pass that on. I have to take the world price. So that's a direct cost for me in my operation that my competitors in Australia and the US don't have. In fact, Australia used to have a carbon tax, and it was so bad, they got rid of it. And you say, why did they get rid of it? Because it was killing their economy. It was ruining their competitiveness, and it was not reducing their emissions. It was not getting the effect that they thought it would have. So why would you go down the path? Why wouldn't you learn from Australia? Why wouldn't you learn from other jurisdictions that looked at this and said, this is crazy? No, because Liberals know best. Liberals know best. They've been telling us for years. When the Liberal government's in power, they tell the West, we know best, we're going to do it our way. And by the way, your ideas are stupid, even though they're way better. That's what we're facing here in Western Canada, and that's what we're facing from this government here, and it's really frustrating. The other thing I find really interesting when we talk to different companies at different committees, we've got companies, steel companies, for example, that are meeting the highest regulations, emitting the lowest amounts of pollution, who are shutting down because of carbon taxes and regulations that this government's brought in and the Liberal provincial government's brought into Ontario. They're shutting them down, but you know what they're being replaced with? Chinese, India, countries where these types of regulations are not in place, where they could care 2 hoots about the environment. So we look at that and we say, wow, like, does this make sense? Does this make sense that we have a state of the, a wonderful facility here in Canada employing Canadians? We're going to shut it down, force it out of business, so we can go get our products from somewhere else that doesn't care about the environment? That's what you're doing when you embrace these types of policies. You know, every organization, whether it's the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the CME, you can talk to a variety of them. Their biggest concern right now with this government being in power is competitiveness. It's their ability to actually compete around the world with a platform that's equal or level to everybody else. And it's really frustrating when we go out and try and sign trade deals to actually level the playing field on the tariffs and regulations, and our guys come back and say, you know what, because of carbon tax, because of other taxes imposed on us that the other competitors don't have, it's going to be tough for us to compete now. 2 years. They did that in 2 years. Take a step back. Take a look at what you're doing. Who is going to work in Canada? We had this situation in Saskatchewan under an NDP government. You know what happened? Our best and brightest left. You know where they went? Alberta. And I know the guys from Alberta would say thank you very much, because a lot of the leaders in Alberta and their universities and their businesses come from Saskatchewan. Exactly. You know what changed that? It was embracing the business community in Saskatchewan. It was Brad Wall coming in and saying, we want you to stay home here. You can actually run an operation and be competitive on a global stage in Saskatchewan and have a great quality of life. And we've got that. We've got that, and we can continue doing that and meet all our achievements and all our goals when it comes to the climate, doing it our way. But what does Ottawa respond with? $60 million loss in transfer payments, $110 million carbon costs, a fight in the courts. Madam Speaker, the disrespect this government has showed to our provinces is just unimaginable. And then they wonder why people don't love them. It's truly amazing. Madam Speaker, I was at a conference today with the Canadian American Board of Trade Association, and one of the issues they brought up yesterday was the amount of traffic going across the line to the U.S. to fill up gas tanks. And their concern they were raising is right now on a tank of gas, let's say 60 litres, you save about $24 leaving Ontario to go across the line to get gas per tank. Once the carbon tax is implemented to the higher standards or higher levels, it's going to be $34. And they're saying it's actually a problem because they're looking at these lanes, they're actually getting full more and more of cars that they have to process through the border. Don't you see what's happening? Can't you understand that? You've become uncompetitive. You've got noble goals, but you've gone about them in the wrong way. And by doing that, you've forced Canadians out of work. You've killed our business community. Why is that a good thing? So I come back to the question, are they doing this because they want to lower emissions or because they want more taxes? And if they wanted to lower emissions, they'd embrace the plan like Saskatchewan or the plan in New Brunswick, but they're not. What are they doing? They're imposing taxes on them because they need the dollars. They want to decide who gets what. They want to be the kingmakers. And Madam Speaker, that's just wrong. Let the market decide. The market will decide as long as you give it the players a level, fair playing field. If you do that, trust the market. It'll actually take care of you. But they don't trust anybody. So their ideas, what they're going to do here to our economy, you know what? It's a sad day, Madam Speaker. Truly a sad day. If they'd listen a little bit, it'd be a lot better. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his remarks. The question that I have for my honourable colleague is he mentioned the fact that gas prices are exceptionally high right now and how it's a travesty and how it's very hard for families to pay for the rise in gas prices. And the concern expressed, I could feel it from across the aisle, Madam Speaker. The question that I have for the honourable member is, when his government was in power for 11 years, what did he and his government do to help ensure that we empowered Canadians to get themselves off of their dependency of oil, of gas, to ensure that they wouldn't be in situations where they were at the will of gas prices going up and down and putting that pressure on them? What did they do besides, Madam Speaker, cut the subsidies that were available for hybrid and electric vehicles, which is exactly what that government did, Madam Speaker?
I just want to remind members that I'm sure that the member who made the speech will be able to answer the questions and doesn't need any help. The honourable member for Prince Albert, a brief answer, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for his question, and it's a fair question, I guess. If somebody from from Eastern Canada would say we're going to actually get rid of all the oil and gas sector in a minute. That's what the Prime Minister's promised. He's just doing what the Prime Minister said. But let me tell you something, Madam Speaker. Saskatchewan government did a study of what the cost of a carbon tax would be to Saskatchewan families, or actually per person costs. $4.5 billion over the next 5 years, $3,853 per person. I can see why you're not releasing the numbers now, because during this provincial election, that's the last thing you want to put out there is these types of numbers. That's Saskatchewan. What do you think it is in Ontario?
It being 5:15, it is my duty to interrupt the proceedings and put forth with every question necessary to dispose of the business of supply. The question is as follows. Monsieur Poilievre, appuyé par Monsieur Comic, propose que, étant donné que la taxe sur le carbone du gouvernement fera hausser le prix du pétrole et que l'idée de faire de meilleurs choix, comme l'a suggéré le premier ministre, n'aiderait pas la plupart des Canadiens et Canadiennes à payer l'épicerie et le